Yeah. This is the Legacy League. Tell me where will your legacy be? Yeah.
Back on the court in 2025, week 4. Saw 4 really good games. The closest margin was 2. We're going to start with that game in a second. But the largest margin was only 13. So every game was within 13 points. We had some really good games. And the teams really, I know it's cliche, picked up right where they left off. So let's start with that first game in week 4. Mario said it. He's like, I've never beaten the Halfway Crooks. And it continues. The Halfway Crooks take down the Air Mambas in a close one, the 2-point game, like I talked about, 79-77. I'll do some stats in a second, so you guys really don't have to, but I'll throw it to our analysts here. Jacob, Aidan, and Burke standing by. Nick Lemoyne, 36 points, led the way. I said it during his post-game interview, only missed 4 shots. Shout out to Aidan, who I believe, and I could be wrong, but Aidan was like, you only missed 4 shots, and that's efficient, right? We like stuff like that, so shout out to him for that. And on the Air Mambas, Mario Valerio, 23, kept him in the game. Have to shout out Anthony Montecalvo, who hit, I think, maybe all of his threes. Hold on, let me get back to this. Yeah, he was 3 of 3 from 3, and all of them came in that fourth quarter when the Air Mambas were trying to come back and ultimately couldn't get over the hump. But we'll go to Aidan first, since he had the stat of the night so far with Nick Lemoyne. But you've seen the Halfway Crooks, another battle with the Air Mambas, but go ahead, just rip both teams apart because it was ugly. I'm livid, but it's fine. Go ahead, Aidan.
Joey is correct. It was quite an ugly game. Both teams did shoot. Well, Halfway Crooks shot 50% from the floor. Air Mamba shot 60%, but it felt like every single play was either ending in a missed shot or a turnover. It was very fast-paced, and yeah, like I said, Nick Lemoyne, he missed 4 shots. That's not like him. No offense to him. Great guy, great player, but he usually is shooting a lot more because he has more volume. Only took 19 shots, which is a lot less than he usually does. But even you on the bench, coaching them, telling them what to do. For the Air Mambas, they have some hope. You're right, haven't beat the Halfway Crooks yet. You guys are a good team. They didn't have Anthony Ramsey, but Anthony Montecalvo, I think people were calling him AJ, Anthony AJ. You're right, he didn't miss a single one of his threes. He was 6 of 6 from the field. Then they subbed him out. So I think there's a little me in the Air Mambas and not a lot of team. So I think that's something they have to work on. But if they can consistently hit their threes, and they've been in a lot of close games, -1, I think. But as long as they can hit their threes, play as a team, they could get a couple wins in this session and maybe make a playoff run. First round win, maybe.
Yeah, well, it's going to depend on that matchup, right? And it always comes down to matchups in the playoffs. Nearly 58% for the Air Mambas from 3. That really kept them in it. 6 of 22 for the Halfway Crooks. We'll go to Jacob here next. I mean, the 3-point shooting, for the Halfway Crooks kind of has been a thing all season. We would expect those to maybe start to fall. Obviously, if I say it all the time, if you're making shots, you're going to be a good team, right? Any team that's making a ton of their shots looks like a good team. That's one of those things with the Halfway Crooks and chemistry, like Nick Lemoyne talked about. But Jacob, in this one, a 2-point game. Your first time seeing some of these teams, so what'd you think?
Yeah, so I was impressed definitely by the shooting, but when it came down to it at the end, it was a 2 that won the game for the Halfway Crooks. And shout out to Charles Correa, who didn't exactly fill out the stat sheet. Wasn't his most efficient game by any means, but it was a 2. And like you just mentioned, Nick pointed out selflessness, and whoever has it going right then and there is definitely the best person to take that shot. And in this case, it was Charles Correa. In another case, it could be Nick Lemoyne or anybody else on the team. And then on the other side of things for the Air Mambas, I feel like now the narrative is starting to shift. Even though we're getting into these close games, the only win they have is against a winless team. And this was really their opportunity to prove something. And I don't think I think it was a competitive game, but I think the narrative isn't going to be, oh, they're in competitive games. It's going to be, okay, now we're 1-3, and if we didn't play the worst team in the league, arguably, are we 0-4 as well?
And, well, because I screwed up the schedule, we will see the Air Mambas and Halfway Crooks again. So maybe that's a treat, a silver lining in that. Burke, you get to kind of fill in here. So, you've been following along, and there's a ton of different directions to go, right? I mean, 7 assists for the Air Mambas seems low, but then again, maybe not. And we kind of talk about that coaching, right, where they're taking out somebody who was hot because other people wanted to play. And, to Aidan's point, I was just like, can we play defense? That it wasn't a brilliant coaching strategy. He's like, guys, I think we built a double-digit lead in the halfway crooks in that first quarter. And then by the time the first quarter was over, it was gone, mainly because, expecting a team to roll over isn't nice or fair, but that's kind of the feel that I had. So I'll put it on myself. Like, we kind of like, all right, cool, it's already over. And it's never over in this league because of how fast things go. So Burke, the halfway crooks get to 2-1. Air Mambas 1-3. But yeah, another close one. And just a couple plays for the halfway crooks down the stretch that were the difference.
Yeah, I was going to say, coming into the game, I expected the halfway crooks to win, and that's what it looked like out of the gate. You guys came down and were just getting bucket after bucket, and I think you guys came a little complacent. You're like, we're just going to pad our stats a little bit, get this win. But then Air Mambas, 15 of 26, very good shooting, which I think is one of the things that they're doing very well. And, if they get hot at the right time during the playoffs, then they could sneak off a win or two. But, live by the 3, die by the 3, we'll see. But I think the halfway crooks, I think they just need to work on the 3-point shooting a bit. If they get that up, then, I think they could be in a better spot.
The halfway crooks 2 wins this season by a combined 4 points. So you do the math on that one. We just talked about this one being a 2-point game. That's not how we want it to be, but that's where we're at week 4 in the season. Talked about the Air Mambas kind of needing to continue the hot shooting. Well, they'll need it next week when they take on the Road Dogs to kick off week 5, the defending champs who did just lose. We're going to get to them in a second, but they'll need to make probably more than 15 of 26 to keep that game competitive, and that goes for a lot of teams against a team like the Road Dogs. The halfway crooks next week get a matchup with the Washed Up Boys, so everyone's kind of switching opponents, which is great because in our second game it was the Washed Up Boys. 2 undefeated teams coming in. The Washed Up Boys remain undefeated, get to 3-0, and take down the defending champs. A semifinal rematch. I said it in the interview after the guys stopped barking into the microphone. But a team win. Hendel talked about it after that game. And let me get this box score up there because I'm slacking. But it was the Washed Up Boys 67-58. A good, again, team win for them. Hendel led the way with 23 and 11 rebounds. He didn't miss from 3, 5 of 5. And you could feel that. You could feel he was hitting from 3, and then he's so shifty and able to then use that against you when you're trying to close out against him. So a big game for him. I might have said it earlier this year, and if not, it was last season. But Leroy Brown, 14 points, 5 rebounds. Let's talk about him early because sometimes he has that 2-point game where, I don't want to use the term did he get off the bus because he does still make an impact, and that's not fair to him. But it's like, You're so big and it's like, come on, have more of an impact on a game. And he did in this one when they needed him to against the Road Dogs. Let's go back to Burke. We'll kind of just keep flipping around the order. A highly anticipated game. A lot of players came early, stayed after to watch, so it had that playoff feel. A low-scoring game, so I promise I'll stop talking in a second, but this is what the playoffs feel like. Right? It was in the 40s at halftime maybe, and that might be generous. Yeah, 30s. It was in the low 30s at halftime because both teams were, there's not as many runouts. Both teams are playing defense, attacking the basket. And so, Burke, your kind of first experience here of that was as close to a playoff game as we're going to get in the regular season. So, just kind of your outlook on that and what stood out in this one as the Washed Up Boys get the win.
Yeah, Road Dogs came out and they looked great. They had a 7-point lead, I think, going into halftime. But third quarter opens up, and I think Road Dogs, they think they were comfortable. We're going to keep going down, getting these easy buckets. Kareem Cooper was carrying them, to say the least. No one else scored above 10 points. But that third quarter was the difference maker. 22-9, Washed Up Boys outscored them. They set the energy. And I just don't think Road Dogs could match it. Del Butler went down with a little bit of an injury, it seemed, in the third quarter, which might have had a little bit of a morale effect on them. But yeah, I think just Washed Up Boys brought the intensity out of halftime, and Road Dogs weren't expecting them, and that's what carried them. And they stay undefeated, and they look really good.
It definitely flipped out of halftime. Kareem Cooper, I hope I didn't shout him out yet, but he looked like the Kareem Cooper that we saw in the playoffs when the Road Dogs made their run in the winter. Defensive energy, offensive energy. He was hitting threes. And so when you start seeing that, he was 4 or 5. When you start seeing that from a guy that physical who can also get to the hoop, it's the same type of thing I talked about with Hendel LaRolle, right? Now it's like, okay, we already know he can go by us and be physical. Now we have to pick, what do we want to give up here? And then on the defensive end, that he is a huge part of that Road Dogs team. He was last year, and he's really the key, and we saw it in this one. But a huge third quarter, Jacob, in this one, and that was the difference, right? The Washed Up Boys kind of flipped the lead, took the lead, and were able to hold on. Rebounds, 29-23, the Road Dogs had them. Some second chance points for the Washed Up Boys, but really, kind of even, right? Around 50% both teams from the floor, around 34, 35, 36% from three, 16 to 11 in free throws. So it's not like any of those things really were the difference. What do you think was the difference in that second half?
Yeah, I think the difference was definitely Hendel, as you pointed out. Normally when we look at the box score, we're looking for a guy with 32, 35 points or maybe a double-double and say, oh, this is the guy that impacted the game the most. But Hendel, I watched some of the tape in the third and the fourth quarter when he got going. He's one of the smarter players that I've watched so far in the legacy leagues, and he's really noticing how teams are guarding him, especially in that third quarter. And when he hit 2 threes, and then gets Anthony Lyons switched on to him, he's able to go right to the paint. It's refreshing to see some of these guys playing at that strategic level where, depending on who's guarding me, I'm going to do this, or depending on what the paint looks like, there's no one who's going to stop me from scoring in the restricted area. I'm going to do that. So that's really refreshing to see. And in general, the Washed Up Boys had a really good game plan. It was like, okay, Kareem Cooper can beat us. No one else can beat us. So Kevin Views, I mentioned Anthony, didn't have great games. And I think it was Burke who mentioned the score. The box score only showed one player in double figures, and that was Kareem. I think that is credit to the defense of the Washed Up Boys for sure.
You can't take it all away, right? And so you kind of have to pick and choose, and that's what it seems like the Washed Up Boys did. When Hendel gets going, and this is what I was going to say. I was stalling, shouting out to all the the comments online about, oh, it's on a low rim. This is the perfect game for people to watch. Exactly what you talked about, right? Let's get the switch. Now we're going to attack the switch, and no one's in the paint, so I'm going to attack the paint, and no one can stop me. Like, those are things we hear about in the NBA, in college basketball, right? And this game, low scoring, so maybe not as fun to watch, but really fun if you're into basketball. And it was a basketball game broke out in the legacy leagues, in this one for sure. Aidan, go wherever you want. But 2, I'm going to do my tiers at some point when I get bored. But these are definitely 2 of the teams in that top tier that faced off in week 4.
Yeah, like every one of you guys said, it was for Jacob and Burke who haven't seen playoff games. Joey's correct. This is a literal legacy leagues playoff game. The thing I like about the Washed Up Boys is they bring so much energy that I think it actually confuses and conflicts with the other team. They're always talking. Mo Rainford, I don't think, stayed quiet for more than 30 seconds that whole entire game. They're always communicating. They're just communicating. And like you said, Road Dogs, Kareem Cooper was incredible. He's got length, especially for 8.5-foot rim league. He's got incredible length, but you're right. If he's on the 3, Anthony Lyons is on him, he's going to drive in. An incredible game. The Road Dogs losing Dell hurt. Prayers up to him if that's a serious injury. But losing Dell kind of hurt because they lost their bigger body to combat Leroy and Kayshawn down there and Jeremy. Wow, the Washed Up Boys just have a bigger body kind of team. But like you said, these 2 teams are in my top tier for the league, and I think we can see them match up in the playoffs again or in the finals.
Yeah, I'm in. I'd like to see him play again. So hopefully, we get to make that happen. Yeah, No, I think that's good. The washed up boys 3-0, like I talked about. Next week they get the halfway crooks. We already did this. The road dogs get the air mambas. Let's get to. We're just gonna go right in order. Lob City, only 4 guys once again, and still find a way to win. 65-52. They beat the Gym Rats, and there were some moments, and this is a credit to the Gym Rats, who are still looking for that first win, but they've been in, you want to talk about, close margins, right? They lost to the halfway crooks by 2. The Rhode Island Warriors game in week 3 kind of got a little out of hand. They lost to the washed up boys, the Gym Rats did, in week 1 by 2. So another one of those teams that has been right there, and they were there with Lob City. Lob City, only 4 guys like we talked about. I'll let these guys kind of go more in detail, but Almar Sabat, 32 points. We shouted him out. I started with that in the interview because of how much of an impact he had. And he was on some past Lob City teams, and Cody said it. He does the little things all the time. So defense, we've seen plays from him. Not scoring, but making sure everyone else is scoring because it's going to be the best for his team. And it was awesome in this game. He kind of looked around and was like, yep, nope, they need me. And so he went for 32 and did it, and was very effective and, didn't take a 3, didn't settle, 11 for 18. So shout out to him. A very important player for a good team. We talked about Kareem Cooper. It comes down to those players who can do it on both ends. And Almar Sabat is one of those guys. Jacob, all you, buddy. Lob City, a big third quarter. They were able to kind of withstand not having any subs, but a big third quarter. But, what'd you see from the 8-time, not the defending champs, but the 8-time champs in Lob City?
Yeah, I mean, no Noah West for this game, and he's one of the, if not the league leading scorer right now, points per game wise. But as you pointed out, Almar is a great scorer, can do pretty much anything he wants whenever he wants. Just like we talked about earlier, he's really good at picking his spots, just like Hendel. And over the last 2 games, I think he's averaging like 25, 26 points per game, really, really picking up as the season progresses. So it'll be interesting to see when we get to the playoffs and it's a little bit more physical basketball, if Lob City can maintain this output despite only having 4 or 5, sometimes 6 guys show up on a night. Is that a deep enough roster to handle that? But I think I'll pass the baton to somebody else because I really wanted to highlight the Gym Rats in this one, despite a loss. Okay, so I'm looking at the stats and who they're playing, and they're putting up some great defensive outings against the stars on some other teams. So I think it was Cody Crawford in this one who only shot 28%, and he's about to hit the 2,000-point club, be the 3rd guy ever in that club, which is super impressive. And then Nick Lemoyne earlier in the season held to under 45% shooting. So the Gym Rats are playing good team defense. It's led by Aidan Viveros. But the defense is great. And I'm looking at their schedule as we move into the second half of the season. They still have the Warriors. They still have the Muffin Tops. And maybe they can squeeze one out against the Road Dogs or somebody else moving forward and sneak in as a 3-5 team, maybe 2-6. And sneak in there. But it starts with a team defense, and that will be key, and that could lead to some success in the playoffs if they're fortunate enough to make it there.
Yeah, the Gym Rats have been right there, and it's always going to kind of come down to that 4th or kind of 5th guy for them scoring-wise, right? We talked about their defense. Team defense has been great. So, Burke, you can kind of touch on this, talk about Lob City. I mean, Lob City just does this every week. So not to kind of focus on the Gym Rats, but for them, it's offense. For Lob City, Josh Smith, they all played the full game, obviously, but, shout out to them. And even kind of looking ahead, so I'll just give Burke a whole bunch of stuff to talk about. They get the Warriors next week, Lob City does, and it is the Gym Rats and Muffin Tops in week 5. So, yeah, I mean, not Cody Crawford's night, but it was Almar Sabat's night. Yeah, I'm not even going to come up with a question. Go ahead, Burke.
Yeah, hopefully they can get a win next week because I don't think they're a bad team. I think their main issue is they let the other team control the game. Lob City has 4 guys in this game. Some of them are not the youngest guys in the world either. and they let them play their style of basketball. You know, you could tell, like, I think it was at halftime, Omar Savit did not, like, he was like, can I get another minute on the bench? He did not want to get up right away. He was like, give me another second. So I think if the Gym Rats pushed the tempo a bit more in this game and made Lob City, like, really run, then they could have went away with it. But, you know, they would go down, shoot a shot, and then Lob City would take 10 seconds to dribble up, sit at the top of the key for 15, and then get their energy, drive, get an easy bucket. And I think that was ultimately it. Like you said, Cody Crawford didn't have a great game, but he was all over the boards. You know, he was controlling the flow of the offense. But I think it just shows, like, how good this team is that they won without two of their starters, Noah West and Victor Cashew, that, like, this team, if they're fully there, like, they're the team to beat.
Yeah, I would take, you know, their 4 or 5 guys over a lot of other teams' 4 or 5 guys still, right? Even without the subs. And that's a credit to the depth on that team. You talk about pace, that is such a big part of the game all the time, right? And sometimes it's a mental thing. It's like, does the other team feel like they're playing defense, or are we just coming down taking a quick shot? Now they have the ball again, and it's almost like a mental thing where it's like you're in control, exactly like you said, right? And so that goes for a lot of teams, especially the Gym Rats in this one. Yeah, I mean, for this game, you know, to be 65-52, that wasn't the best way for the Gym Rats to win, right? You know, I think, and I do this all the time, like if this game gets in the 80s, you know, maybe we like the Gym Rats more, right? Because that means there was more shots and more pace. So, but yeah. Go ahead, Aidan, and then I'll talk about kind of the Gym Rats and possibly that first round matchup, because they are going to get some wins, and they played teams like the Washed Up Boys, the Halfway Crooks, you know, Lob City close. It's going to be interesting to see who they get, maybe as a 3-6, and it's like, all right, yeah, this is not, you know, the easiest of matchup as a 3-6, like, but yeah. So go ahead, Aidan.
Crap. Yeah, like you said, the Gym Rats, they're a good team. They fight close games. Like I remember you asked the question week 1 or week 2, who's your favorite player to watch, and it's Brandon Whitman because he's everywhere. If you go and look at the score, where the Gym Rats fell short was in the third quarter. They got outscored 16-6, and like we said before, Lob City with 4 aging guys, no offense to them, but 4 aging guys, they controlled the whole entire pace of the game. They made you play how they wanted to play. And it's just goes to show you how Cody plays winning basketball. Yeah, he shot 6 of 21, but that doesn't mean he's going to stop trying. He's going to continue to shoot. And Amar Sabat, he literally all over the floor. Gym Rats, they have some hope. Antonio wasn't there this week. They lost one of their big men. I think that would have helped them a little bit more size, because Lob City, Cody's a little shorter, but the other guys have a little bit of size. They're a little bit bigger. But very close games for them. Like you said, if they can squeak out 2 to 3 wins and get into that matchup, depending on who they face, they could get a first round upset, but they need to win games, really. They need to just figure out what is really happening with them. Starting off 0-4 is never easy in any league, but it's about how you finish the second half of the season that determines where you guys are going to go.
A good spot to end. Lob City is one of the 2 undefeated teams. Aidan might be able to correct me, and I'm trying to check in real time. I don't believe, Lob City, it looks like, did not play the Washed Up Boys last season. And the Washed Up Boys were, I believe, 5-0, 6-0 last season, and then lost a couple in some closer games down the stretch. I'm excited for those 2 teams to play this season, especially with the amount of success both of those teams have had the last 2, like I talked about, undefeated teams here in the winter 2025 season. The last game, also a good one. I know we have so much to talk about today. The Cold Hearts get the win. They are now the lone 3-1 team, and they defeat the RI Warriors. It was 86-75, so kind of a little more scoring in this one. Huge first quarter for both teams, but Justin Bianchi with 30, Thomas DeAndrea with 22, 65% shooting for that team from the floor. We talk about control. They were in control, it felt like to me, for a lot of this game, and it was kind of always the RI Warriors having to play catch-up. Aidan, the Cold Hearts 3-1. This is me totally not being prepared, but their lone loss, anybody? to Lob City.
Lob
I figured
City,
it out. So, I mean, there you go. They're beating the teams they're supposed to beat. They're kind of right in that middle to upper part of the league. They have some tougher games still coming up, so we'll get to learn more about them. But what'd they do in this one, Aidan?
Again, this is one of the younger teams in the league, and they want to rim run. They want to push the pace back and forth. Thomas DeAndrea, 22 and 10 rebounds, and fourth straight double-double, I think, in the league. It's incredible because a lot of his points come from lobs or standing in his spot on the wing, getting into the paint, dishing it, or scoring. Like I said, they're a young team. Justin Bianchi, 30 points. He missed 2 shots the whole entire game. Shot 2 threes. He's not known for three-point shooting. I went back and looked at the stats. He doesn't shoot that many threes, but he's efficient and he can get the job done. For the RI Warriors, it's a little kind of in the middle. I think, like I said, with the Air Mamas, it's a lot of me, and me. A lot of talking across the board. Only 4 guys scored. Henry only had 1 point, made a free throw. But other than that, you have 3 guys that scored over 15. You're not really moving the ball around. Basil was 0 of 8, which is not going to happen every time because he's an incredible three-point shooter, just an off night. I think his teammates were chirping at him and getting in his head, whatever. But, like you said, yeah, the Cold Hearts are 3-1. Their lone loss from Lob City. They're beating the teams they need to beat. If it's just when they run into like a washed-up boys or road dogs and just see how that plays out. That's going to be their biggest test, and I'm assuming they match up with both of them during the regular season so they can get a little feel when the playoffs come around. But all in all, a fantastic showing from the Cold Hearts in the first 4 weeks of the season.
They have a bye in week 5, and out of the bye, the Cold Hearts get the Road Dogs. So there you go. They get to kind of sit at 3-1 and get ready for a matchup with the defending champs. We'll go back to Burke. I think we need to talk about this. 42 threes. I'm jealous. I want to be on a team like that. Jeez, that's like my dream, right? But 14 of 42, still 33%. And, they were in this game. I feel like, and I'll go to Burke right now, I feel like a lot of those came in that fourth quarter. Like if they made 14 in that game, maybe like 5 kind of came in that fourth quarter when they almost came back. And you can tell me I'm totally wrong, Burke, but it felt like they started hitting at the end, which means they were more like 9 of 35, 8 for 35 going into that stretch, which isn't what they need to do to win.
Yeah, this team's one-dimensional on offense. They want to shoot threes, and you can shoot as many threes as you want, but you got to establish that you can get to the rim and score some layups because teams are just going to play you on the three-point line and like get in your face, and you're going to have to shoot deeper ones, and those aren't going to go in as often. So they got to look to drive the ball more. Kevin Veter was driving the ball. It seemed like he was trying to get inside and kick it out, but Brandon Kakela, 18 threes. I would like to see you moving the ball a bit more. Yeah, and on defense, they also seem to be living on the three-point line. No one's really crashing the glass. They seemed a little weak inside. So I think they just need to chill out on the threes a little bit. They can still take a good amount, but yeah, maybe some more layups and stuff like that.
Burke's message to the RI Warriors, quote, chill out on the threes. They were missing some of their bigger players, so a smaller version of the RI Warriors in this one. We're going to go to Jacob and the Cold Hearts and kind of his impression of them in a second. But for the RI Warriors, Kevin Veter is that player that they should rely on a little more to create because he can get to the basket, right? And so if you can get him going to the basket, it's going to make it easier for everyone else to shoot when the ball goes inside one way or another and then back out, right? It doesn't have to be a post touch, but that's going to make for better offense. Back to the Cold Hearts, Jacob, and, God forbid, do not bring up their age because I'm the same age as everyone on Lob City, so now I'm old, okay? I'm kidding. But, they like the pace, they like to play up-tempo, and they were, again, in control of this game. 4 players scored in double figures, but, what'd you think about the Cold Hearts?
Yeah, I think the Cold Hearts play an exact opposite style of the Warriors. The Warriors are true to their name, just like the Golden State Warriors. They live and die by the three, whereas the Cold Hearts put a lot of pressure on the rim, especially in the second half. I mean, it was a close game through the first 35 minutes, and then you see the Cold Hearts start to control the pace a little bit more and pick their spots better. I think it was Daniel Holloway who gets to the free throw line near the end of the game, and Steven Solier, he scored a couple times in the paint. And as Aidan pointed out, Bianchi's 30 points are completely in the restricted area. He's not shooting a lot. So these guys are able to get what they want inside the paint. And if you can do it at such an efficient clip, it's better than taking as many threes as we see some other teams shooting. I think a lot of the complaint around the NBA right now is that teams are shooting too many threes. It's just a shot chucking fest. And we're not seeing that from the Cold Hearts because they're so efficient. And when you get to playoff basketball, teams want to guard the layup and the three the most. So if you can hit the mid-range at an efficient level, you are going to be really successful. And the Cold Hearts are doing that. They're hitting the mid-range, which is pretty rare for an 8.5-foot rim league. Excuse me. And they're getting the layups they want. They're getting to the free throw line when they want. So if they can continue to put that pressure on the rim, it will surprise teams just like it surprised the Warriors, given, like you said, they're missing some of their bigger guys. But I think that Bianchi will go at any big man, whether there's a big man on the floor or not. And that's refreshing to see. That's good to see.
Yeah, we talked about it. The Cold Hearts have the bye. Next up for the Warriors, they get Lob City, and then followed up by the Washed Up Boys. So 2 tough games for the Warriors, and their 1 win so far is against the Gym Rats. And so I bring that up to say that is the first tiebreaker, right? So if both of those teams finish with 2 wins, it would be the Warriors ahead of the Gym Rats in the standings, which makes it even a little trickier for the Gym Rats to jump them. But we've seen it. We've seen it be done. All right, that's our Week 4 games. One last thing for you guys. I told you I'd put you on the spot. Hold on. All right, y'all can't pick the same team. I'm going to Aidan first, but let me know if this makes sense. Which team is going to double their wins or more than the wins they currently have right now? So we're kind of halfway. Okay, so it could be a team that's 3-0, 4-0 that you think is going to, more than double. Let's try to make this interesting, right? More than double. So a 4-0 team, there's a 4-0 team. So you kind of can't pick Lob City because technically they can't more than double. Okay, so good. So we'll have plenty of time to talk about Lob City towards the end of the season, I promise, because they're always around forever. Okay, but which team do you think is going to more than double their current win total through Week 4? Aidan. Now listen, let me just preface with this. Sorry, it's not wrong to pick the halfway crooks. Okay, there's always good opportunities to suck up. Aidan has done it many times in the past. Okay, so Burke and Jacob, you have your opportunities here. You both can't do it. So I'm just saying you don't have to pick the halfway crooks, but a very good opportunity to get brownie points. Aidan, you're smarter than that. You're not going to do that. So which team do you like to more than double their win total?
You sold me out, Joey. I was going to pick you guys because I think you guys are playing cohesive as a team. But if I had to pick one, that's tough because in my opinion,
just do it. Just do it. Let's go.
I'll pick you guys then. You guys are playing more as a cohesive team. And if Nick keeps shooting efficiently, you guys are going to win closer games. And as long as you delegate how to play defense, people are doing what? I think you guys can finish 6-2, 7-2, if 9 games, right? There's 9 games. So 6-3, 8. All right, so 6-2.
Everyone gets a bye.
I think you guys can rattle off 3 more wins. You might lose 1 or 2 here and there, but I think you guys can keep building on your 2-1 start. All
right, he did it. He took the bait. I would say, an insider perspective, I think the halfway crooks are at about 60% cohesiveness rating, which this is playing as a team wise, and we haven't hit shots. So if things start going, I also like our chances. I'm biased. All right, Burke. Which team's going to more than double their win total? You can't pick the halfway crook, so you guys are beat on that one. Go ahead.
I know they got 0 wins, but Gym Rats, they're going to get some wins. So we kind of just talked about them a little while ago. They're going to get Muffin Tops soon, so that should be a win there. Again, they play good basketball. I think if they just learn to control the tempo of the game, go to their big guys inside, I think they're going to definitely rattle off some wins and could even beat a team in the playoffs that's highly ranked if they come in lower ranked.
All right, and Cam Grilly for them. I talked about him when the Gym Rats played the Halfway Crooks. I think he was like the third leading scorer. I'm not going to pull up the stats, but I wanted more from him in this game when they could have used that third scorer. We talked about offense against Lob City. He's a good player, so it'll come, but he's one of those guys, like, let's get him going to kind of help Brandon Whitman and Aidan Viveros. All right, in an attempt to make it easier for Jacob, I may have made it slightly harder because now he can't pick the Gym Rats or the Halfway Crooks. Which team you taking?
Well, I was going to take the Gym Rats because it's pretty easy to double zero. But I'll go with the washed up boys. I think Hendel, like I mentioned earlier, is one of the smarter players I've seen in the league so far. And with 5 games left, I feel like it's very doable to go 3-2 for them. They've got the Warriors and the Muffin Tops still on their schedule. So if really we're looking at, can they pull off 1 to 2 wins out of 3 teams in that upper echelon? And I think it's doable. I'm trying to pull up some box scores so I can reference some stats in particular. But yeah, I just think Hendel has a pretty good supporting cast. And I don't think he's easy to stop. I don't feel like there's one point of attack defender and good rim protector on the same team that can prevent him from getting both his threes and his points around the basket. So I'll go with the washed up boys.
A good pick. The person that comes to mind would have been Kareem Cooper, and we saw that a little bit, and he just went for 20-something like we talked about, but was super effective. Hendel was. We talked about that a half hour ago. I think the other one, just to quickly mention, is the Road Dogs, right? And not that this is, a rainy day for the Road Dogs. Sure, they lost 1 game, but with 2 wins, you would expect them to still win a ton of games in the second half of the season. So shout out to them. Of course, we're not going to talk about every team, but I like it. Good job. All right, put you guys on the spot. You passed. We talked about the Halfway Crooks. We checked all the boxes, guys. We're good. Good job on the postgame show. Week 4 in the books. We'll be back for Week 5. For Jacob, Aidan, Burke, I'm Joey. You guys hang out 1 second on the podcast after this. But everybody else, thanks for listening. And we will have more content throughout the week and be back next week for Week 5.